Breaking news! Things are heating up with the Los Angeles Rams, and fans are waiting to see what will actually happen with Alaric Jackson. Well, let's talk about that and bring you all the latest updates. But I also want to cover other important topics regarding the Rams. This is going to be a straight-to-the-point video, and I need your attention. Before we move on, make sure you've hit the like button. But only do that if you've been a Rams fan for over 17 years. It's great to see fans of all ages here. If possible, write this: Go Rams! We're going to the Super Bowl this year. Now, let's get into the main topic of the day. Alaric Jackson faces the possibility of a lengthy NFL suspension after his case, stemming from a domestic dispute in June, was referred to a pre-filing diversion program. This development could give the league sufficient grounds to punish the Rams' starting left tackle under its personal conduct policy. Jackson was accused of getting into a domestic dispute with a woman at his home. According to reports, he allegedly tried to take the phone out of her hands and scratched her during the struggle. The case has taken a significant turn since then. Instead of proceeding through the full criminal justice process, it was directed into a pre-filing diversion program. As Mike Florio explained, and as cited in the report, this type of program can serve as an alternative to a guilty plea or a full trial. But it doesn't necessarily absolve Jackson in the eyes of the NFL. This is the crucial point for the Rams. The NFL doesn't require a criminal conviction to determine that a player has violated its personal conduct policy. Because of this new development, Jackson could now face league sanctions, and the consequences could be significant for the Los Angeles team, which might need to prepare to play without its starting left tackle. The NFL does not necessarily need a criminal conviction before determining that a player violated its personal conduct policy. The league has its own disciplinary process, and according to the report, Jackson's entry into the diversion program could provide enough grounds for the NFL to determine that a violation occurred. If that happens, the conversation quickly moves from whether Jackson will be suspended to how long he could be unavailable. That is especially concerning because this is not being presented as Jackson's first disciplinary issue. The report points out that he was previously suspended for 2 games in 2024 for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. That history could make the current situation much more serious. The report argues that because Jackson would now be considered a repeat offender under the league's personal conduct policy, Rams fans should not expect a minor punishment if the NFL decides to suspend him. The discussion specifically points toward the possibility of a lengthy absence. For a domestic violence personal conduct violation, the report says the baseline punishment would be 6 games. But because Jackson has a previous violation, the expectation presented is that his potential punishment could go beyond that number, with 7 or more games discussed as a realistic possibility. To be clear, the report does not present an official suspension from the NFL. It also does not provide an official number of games handed down by the league. What it does present is a strong expectation that discipline is coming and that Jackson's previous history could make that discipline significant. And that distinction is important. Until the NFL makes its decision, Rams fans cannot say with certainty exactly how many games Jackson will miss. But Los Angeles also cannot simply prepare as though nothing is going to happen. For a team with high expectations, potentially losing its starting left tackle for a major portion of the season is a huge problem. Left tackle is one of the most important positions on an NFL offense. This is the player responsible for handling some of the most dangerous pass rushers on the field and helping keep the quarterback protected. When the starter disappears, replacing him is rarely as simple as moving the next player up the depth chart and expecting everything to continue normally. That is exactly where the Rams could find themselves. The concern is not just losing Jackson, it is what happens immediately after losing him. The report discusses several possible options Los Angeles could consider at left tackle: David Quessenberry, Keegan Trost, and A.J. Arcuri. There is also another possibility mentioned, which would be moving Warren McClendon from right tackle over to the left side. But every one of those possibilities comes with questions. Based on the situation described in the report, David Quessenberry appears to be the most realistic early option. One simple reason is availability. Quessenberry is healthy, while Trost has been dealing with a hamstring strain. That injury is particularly unfortunate for Trost because this is exactly the kind of moment when a backup tackle needs opportunities. With uncertainty surrounding Jackson, the preseason could have given Trost a chance to show the coaching staff that he was capable of becoming a dependable swing tackle. Instead, the hamstring issue has cost him valuable time and made the Rams' decision more complicated. Then there is A.J. Arcuri. The assessment in the report is not particularly encouraging. He is viewed there as functional depth rather than someone Los Angeles should comfortably place into the starting lineup and expect strong results from immediately. That brings everything back to Quessenberry. The important thing for Rams fans to understand is that expecting a backup offensive tackle to perform exactly like an established starter is usually unrealistic. NFL teams simply do not have starting-caliber players sitting behind every starter on the offensive line. If Jackson is unavailable, somebody is going to have to step into an extremely important role. The question is whether that player can perform well enough to keep the offense functioning. And that might be the biggest football concern created by this entire situation. The Rams can build their offensive plans around the starting five, but those plans can change very quickly when the player protecting one edge of the offensive line suddenly disappears for several weeks. The coaching staff can help a replacement tackle. The offense can adjust protections. Los Angeles can change certain things schematically. But at some point, the player lining up at left tackle still has to win his matchup. That is why a potential absence of 7 or more games would feel very different from losing Jackson for only a week or two. 7 games is a significant portion of a season. It gives opposing teams time to identify a weakness and attack it. It forces the Rams to find a sustainable solution instead of a short-term emergency replacement. And it means the offensive line has to develop chemistry without the player who was supposed to be the starting left tackle. The frustrating part for the Rams is that the concern comes at a time when expectations for the team are high. The report makes that point very clearly. This is not a situation where Los Angeles wants to spend the opening portion of the season experimenting at one of the most important positions on the field. The Rams want stability. Instead, they could be facing uncertainty. And there is another layer to this that goes beyond simply deciding who starts at left tackle. Jackson's long-term future with the organization could eventually become a question as well. The report expresses serious frustration with the fact that Jackson has previously dealt with an off-field situation that resulted in a suspension. The current accusation and potential discipline, therefore, do not exist in isolation. They come with history attached. That changes the conversation. When a player has one problem, an organization can decide how it wants to respond to that individual situation. When another problem follows and the league potentially becomes involved again, reliability becomes part of the discussion. Can the Rams count on Jackson to be available? That is not the same thing as asking whether he is capable of playing left tackle. Talent and availability are two different issues. A player can help a football team only when he is actually able to take the field. If off-field problems repeatedly remove an important starter from the lineup, the organization eventually has to consider how much uncertainty it is willing to accept. The report also makes an important distinction concerning Jackson's past availability. His previous health problems involving blood clots are described separately from his off-field issues, and they should be treated separately. A medical problem is obviously not the same thing as a disciplinary situation. The concern being raised here specifically involves the possibility of another absence connected to conduct away from football. And for Los Angeles, that matters. The Rams have to make roster decisions not only based on how talented a player is when everything is going well, but also based on whether they believe that player can consistently be available and dependable. Jackson plays a premium position. That makes the situation even more difficult. Good offensive tackles are not easy to find. Teams cannot simply go searching for a new starting left tackle every time something happens and expect a quality player to be waiting. That scarcity is one reason the potential suspension creates such an immediate problem. Los Angeles has players who can step in, but the report clearly raises doubts about whether any of the current alternatives can provide the same level of stability the Rams expected from Jackson. Quessenberry may be the first option because he is healthy and available. Trost could potentially enter the conversation once his hamstring allows him to return. Arcuri provides another body on the depth chart. McClendon could potentially be moved from the right side if the Rams believe that gives them a better combination. But none of those options completely removes the concern. The Rams still have to decide which solution creates the least disruption across the entire offensive line. Moving one player can sometimes create another problem. If Warren McClendon moves from right tackle to left tackle, for example, Los Angeles then has to consider what that move means for its depth and plans on the right side. If Quessenberry takes over, the Rams have to determine how much help he might need and how that affects the rest of the offense. Now, I want to hear from you, Rams fans. If Jackson receives a lengthy suspension, who do you trust most to take over at left tackle? Would you give David Quessenberry the first opportunity? Wait to see what Keegan Trost can do when healthy. Consider moving Warren McClendon. Or do you believe the Rams need another solution? And beyond this season, after another potential disciplinary issue, should Los Angeles still view Alaric Jackson as part of its long-term plans? Tell me what you think, because if the NFL decision comes down the way this report expects, this could quickly become one of the biggest challenges the Rams have to solve.